Hello everyone. Welcome back to our City Skylines series of Coniferia. Now, in the most recent episode, we built the very first tram network of the region here in the capital city of Port Douglas. And in today's episode, we are continuing the expansion of Port Douglas. Really want to get this city more extended and fleshed out so that it's more established. So we're gonna continue on that note today. Really happy how the tram network turned out. I know that some of these, yeah, it might not be the most realistic look, but while we generally strive to make things look pretty realistic here on the channel, we also want it to look and be fun. So we're not really afraid of sacrificing a bit of realism for some fun aesthetics and some stuff that just looks cool. Oh, I really love that we got a tram network going, and I'm so happy that many of you not just agree with how well it turned out, but also on the previous video, so the one before we did the tram network, so many of you suggested the tram network as well. So really happy we got that going, and now the trams are running on this main line here that cuts through the current city of Port Douglas. Like I said, we're gonna expand some more in this episode. Should be really exciting. What I aim to expand in this episode is incorporating this area. So just developing this area that is nestled between the big tram depot, the big highway, and the railway network. So basically around this primary avenue that kind of stretches its way through the entirety of downtown and continues to the southwest as well. We want to develop this, and I'm really looking forward to this because I'm gonna see how well we can nail a sort of a density transition from downtown. Now, what I mean by that is that downtown Port Douglas is obviously pretty dense. One of the goals we wanted to achieve with the development of Port Douglas was that to really make it very distinct and make it look very different from the city of Pine Harbour that we can see here in the background, is that due to Port Douglas being placed on this island and being the capital city, the narrative is pretty clearly that land here is expensive. You're gonna have to, if you wanna get full, if you really wanna maximize the land usage and the footprints here, you're gonna have to build up. And that has been the case for, as you guys can see, more than 100 years. Even the very old buildings of downtown are generally pretty tall, at least compared to Pine Harbour, the other main city of the region. And as we transition from downtown, I'll just show you guys the outlines of Port Douglas downtown, which we've marked here with a district. The challenge for us now is that as we transition from downtown to inner city neighborhoods, here and up the mountain, and even further out to, suburbia even, we're gonna try to see if we can have a very smooth density transition. And I think to explain that best, we're gonna take a look at its rival city. So this is the city of Pine Harbour, which we've of course been spending lots of episodes building. Look at this train station. I just love this. Sorry. And as I said, we want to have Pine Harbour and Port Douglas be very distinct from each other because they are geographically placed very differently. Even though they're quite close, it's obvious that a land isn't really at a premium here in Pine Harbour because it's readily available. The city can just, developers can quote unquote just buy up more farmland and expand, and that's where they've been doing in some areas. We've got we can see this new residential expansion that's taking place right here. People are, developers are building homes here, cookie cutter homes, but homes nonetheless. And the density is just generally lower. Land isn't as expensive. This also means that the downtown of Pine Harbour, while it's actually a nice bustling downtown, if you ask me, then it's generally pretty low density. And the transition from downtown Pine Harbour to its more residential areas is really steep. I mean, look at this. We're a couple of blocks from being in the center of downtown Pine Harbour, and it's more or less just single family developments here. So it really quickly transitions into these low density areas, and that's not what we want for Port Douglas. We don't want low density areas out here. We want density transitions. And that's why I think this episode and future episodes and the continuous expansion of Port Douglas in general is going to be very interesting. I hope we can achieve a very distinct look. And I hope we can achieve a look where we can take screenshots of Pine Harbour and Port Douglas and you'd be able to instantly tell where you are. At least if you're given one more piece of information, which is how far are we from downtown, right? So hopefully, if you provide a screenshot of future Port Douglas and you tell the person looking at screenshot, we are about 4 blocks from downtown, they should be able to tell whether the screenshot is from Port Douglas or Pine Harbour. But we'll see. It's going to be a fun challenge. And like I said, the first part of the challenge is going to be developing this area here, nestled in here, and we'll see how to manage that density transition. Should be really interesting. Now, I know that the channel has received quite a few new subscribers and new viewers in the past week or so, and for that I'm of course very grateful, and you are very welcome on board. But if you are a new viewer and you haven't watched the entire series of Coniferia, you might be asking, dude, what? Pine Harbour? What's this whole thing about? You're in luck. I'm gonna give a quick introduction and tour of the region of Coniferia. If you're a hardcore OG that's been here from the start, you may want to skip this. Otherwise, grab a cup of coffee and we'll take a little tour. So generally, Coniferia is a sunny coastal region where we are being inspired by many different themes from around the world. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and a bit of the good old USA mainly. The idea behind not restricting ourselves to any one country or a theme is that it hopefully gives us more creative freedom in what we want to build here. And I think we've achieved that so far because we've built some really diverse type of areas and neighborhoods. We've got a bit of everything really. So a quick tour. The primary, or at least the biggest city currently of the region, is obviously this city of Pine Harbour. It has around 9,000 inhabitants currently, give or take, and I'm using the realistic population mod, so it should be pretty realistic given the size of the city. If we move north, we've got this bustling town of Tagfield with some really diverse areas as well. Tagfield's population is hovering around 3,500 to 4,000 at the moment. And it's generally it's grown into a nice town and a good place to live, but it's generally not a place where the inhabitants also work. There are very few jobs here. In fact, about 85% of the population of Tagfield commute into Pine Harbour for work. Now this is actually rather easy because the city is pretty well connected, as you guys can see, by bus service, but it's also got a commuter rail line that runs pretty frequently. It's got this relatively modern train station. Let's just see if we can catch the commuter rail. Yes, we've got it here moving into the city of Pine Harbour. So that's covering Tagfield. The third establishment, urban settlement, basically of the region is good old Danton. This is just a small sleepy suburb with a gas station. Not much is going on here, and as you guys have probably guessed, this is a place many people move if they want a really quiet place to raise their children, and they just want to get a bit away from the city generally. Just about everyone that lives here either commutes to work in Pine Harbour or they have their own businesses that they can conduct their work from their home address. Generally, the amount of businesses in Danton is quite high as a percentage of the population. So quite a few people work fully remotely by being self-employed basically. Danton is connected to Pine Harbour by a bus service which runs pretty frequently. We've got a single stop here in Danton, that's all it really needs. And of course, last but certainly not least in the few most recent episodes we've been developing this city of Port Douglas, which is the capital city of the region, which is I think really well represented here by the regional capital of Coniferia and the administrative buildings as well. This is the city we're currently developing, and as I said, we're gonna move along this avenue and hopefully build a really beautiful, interesting area here as well. So let's go. So something I want to start out with is using the same technique that we used when we built the very first part of Port Douglas. So this downtown core, which we built a couple of episodes ago. And the technique we used there was to establish two things. And the first one was that we wanted to try and kind of figure out what's the maximum height that we want represented in this area. And in this case, as you guys can see, most of the tallest buildings of Port Douglas are within like the same kind of height category. And that's because we very specifically used the building heights, let's see, the filter here in the Find It mod to kind of narrow down the selection of buildings we wanted. So that's the first aspect we considered. And the second one is that we used that rule to then place the tallest buildings in the city first, and then we worked our way down. So if we say, for instance, that the tallest buildings that we'd like to see are between 55 and 65 meters, then we would place down all the buildings from that height range that we wanted, and then we would lower this amount and place the next set of buildings. I like to do that because the tallest buildings, unless they have a really small footprint, they are usually going to be the most defining buildings of a certain area. And I think both of those tricks, if you could call it that, is something that I'd like to employ in this area as well. So I want to establish a maximum height, and then I want to use that height frame to pick the most prominent buildings of the area and start placing those first. Because then I'll sort of establish the skyline of an area, and I feel it's more easy to build the areas that then surround the skyline, and it's also easier to kind of make a change really early on if we feel that, okay, the types of buildings and the high rises we place now, they're just too high, or the area is going to be a little too dense for this to make sense, etc. So that's going to be our first step. So for heights, I'm thinking that we're gonna keep 45 as like the maximum height that we'd want to see. So let's say 40 to 45. If we can pick a few buildings from this range, and we'll just compare it to the tallest buildings downtown. And I think this is fine, but we probably shouldn't place more than 2, maybe 3 buildings at this height range. And if you guys feel that that's actually a little tall, when you consider the fact we are moving outside of downtown, then the reason is that I'd like this avenue to really showcase that it's, acquiring a piece of land here to develop something is really expensive along this avenue, because it's such a prominent corridor throughout the city. It's well served by public transport. Obviously, you got the trams, you've got the central station just nearby, and you've got really easy access to the highway. And you've got a beautiful view as well. If you have an apartment which has a clear view, you've got a fantastic view here. So you're really close to a bustling city. You're really close to a mountain. You're really close to big. You've got the ocean here. You're gonna have some beach areas down here. So all in all, it's just a nice location. So land is expensive here near this main avenue. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's start off with trying to find something in this height category and see if we can place something down. So now I've just reduced the references from 35 to 40 meters. I ended up placing 2 buildings in the tallest category. This 80s-ish apartment with some pretty fantastic views in either direction actually. I just created like a commercial base as well. And then I placed this really modern apartment complex here, used procedural objects to create a zip link to the building here so that it has a bit of a more unique shape, and it kind of fits a bit better with the location of it. Obviously really nice location as well. I guess if we go in here, yeah, there's gonna be some fantastic views at night from this apartment, I think. Yeah, you're really gonna feel that you're close to the heart of the city here while not being right in the center of all the busy stuff. So yeah, I kind of like what we've got so far, at least. As I said, we've dropped the height a bit, and we're gonna see if we can pick out some prominent buildings from this height level that we'd like to use. And here we've got Woodlock Architects. Yeah, a really prominent architect studio, of the city, one of the most famous of the region. And they've made some really clever use of this awkward piece of land, I think. And yeah, you know, this certainly looks like a building where you'd house some creative architects, if you ask me. So something I'd like to establish is a bridge over here, also to add a road where we can have some smaller roads branch off, because this area, this piece of land here, it's just a little too deep to I think have meaningful development only alongside the avenue. We need to create a road network back here, so we have some more plots of land to develop. We are now transitioning into the 30 to 35 meter range, and this is probably the last specified range we're gonna use. Place maybe 1 or 2 more buildings, and then we're just gonna ease up a bit on this filter and just start placing down what makes the best sense, basically. So what you see me doing here is using node controller stretch to actually make these retaining walls with fences much thinner. I think that gives them just a bit of a better aesthetic, and they are also a little easier to fit actually. And I wanted to kind of follow this on-ramp without actually obstructing it. So if we just move this ever so slightly, should be able to avoid too much. There you go. And now we're just using the building height to set a restriction. We don't want to go above 30 meters. So I've been detailing these backyards pretty heavily. Yeah, sorry if it looks a little weird. I wasn't quite sure what I was actually aiming for here, so I've just been really winging it. Very spontaneous decision. And I was sort of thinking, I mean, I know we've spent quite a bit of time detailing a small area, but I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool with like an underground parking garage here? We've got this space and we could like build the garage down onto this plateau. Let's try it. And we'll just need to remove like I think we can actually just use Bob to just remove maybe from this particular segment. Or it's probably easier to just use network skins to we'll remove the light pole at least. So that's a start. And we'll just update it. There you go. And then let's see what we can do here. I will just drag it in a bit further like that. This is certainly gonna be interesting. We've already got a piece of wall here that we can adjust. And I think I'm gonna grab another piece and put it over here. And just try and align. Maybe we should align it real close to the building. And you know what? I think this is just fine. It's a little simple. And I'm gonna use this concrete filler because it doesn't clip with anything. Like so. But can a car actually fit here? And that's we need to ensure that at least. So let's see if we've got a car prop. We've got a police car. It's okay, I guess. Could be even steeper. So let's just see if we can find ourselves a node. Guess it's this one. It's very steep. Wow. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect and bring it further in beneath here, like so. So that we've got a bit of a turn here. And I think we're gonna say this is good enough. There's nothing wrong with that. With saying that. Then we'll need to cover up our tracks. And here I'm gonna make a custom filler. And then I'm gonna use this new lane controller mod to adjust the lanes just a bit so that the vehicles don't clip into the filler. So I can pick this lane and I can just switch it a bit because I've widened this section with no controller, made the road more wide. That should allow us to. I think this looks pretty good. I can probably adjust this just a bit more, like so. Very nice. So for the areas just behind the layer of development that is facing this big avenue, I want to try and achieve a diverse look and maybe a bit of an awkward mix even. So if possible, a bit of industrial mixed with some old row houses and some new developments. And it's just trying to create a story, a narrative of, when was the highway built and to what effect did it destroy a pre-existing neighborhood here? So what were the consequences? And this small road we're placing now, is this a newer one that was put in place just after the highway was put in place to create better connections, so that there was some effort to try and alleviate the I guess the destructive effects of the highway back then. It all creates some really fun shapes to work with, because you end up with these relatively small blocks of land that also have some odd shapes. And I love working with that because it kind of it pushes your creativity basically, and you have to just try some stuff out, which is also what we see happening here. So lots of different buildings are like put into place first to see if it's a good fit, and then when I finally find one, which is this relatively modern apartment complex, I do end up turning it into a procedural object and distorting it a bit, because the shape of this part of the block is just a little too custom. It's far from being a rectangle. Managed to squeeze in a really narrow parking lot here, which when you see it later, or when you see the finished product, it certainly requires some proper parking skills from the residents here. But this is a pretty high density area, like we discussed earlier. It's probably pretty desirable as well, even though it still has a bit of grime left. So you'll just have to make do with the parking as a resident here. This area here, the backyards of this modern row house, I had no idea what to do. So the classic one is just, let's grab a ton of flowers and some trees and just make it beautiful and wild, and enable us to cover it up. So the area surrounding this sunken road near the central train station of Port Douglas is quite tricky to work with, because I'd like to have some sort of building that can have a front to both the elevated segment and the lowered segments. And so in this case, I use the same building, and I sort of just move it around a bit so that I feel it makes sense that it's a single structure, while in fact it's two residential buildings facing away from each other, so to speak. But it kind of creates a uniform design that looks all right. And the rest of the space, as you will see me do here, I fill in some low density commercial that also looks sort of industrial. It's a bit of a weird spot to work with, and it takes a little extra time to work with these spots, but I think that the time is well spent, because it does kind of stand out when you get something fit in here. All right, so this episode is already turning into quite a long run. I'm on a bit of a streak here, and I gotta be careful not to set the expectation that all episodes are gonna be like more than 40 minutes long. But I don't really feel we're done yet. I mean, we've got so much done in this episode, but there are just a few things that I'd like that we need a little more, right? We need to do a little more. So what I'd like to achieve in this episode before we call it off, finish the day, is I'd like to establish a bridge here actually, running over the train tracks, and probably not connecting to this road, but rather this avenue. I think that could be really cool, and I've got this feeling that we should have some trams run, a tram bridge above the train tracks. Now you can build tram bridges, but I assume it's also rather expensive. So yeah, we're gonna sacrifice a bit of sound public financial management and then have a cool bridge, right? But let's just start with a regular bridge, and then we'll see where we move from there, if we need an actual tram bridge. I don't know, what do you think? I think it could be so cool though. Let me know in the comments what you guys feel about that suggestion. But I think one thing that we're gonna certainly do is we're not gonna connect this bridge to this road. That would just be a little too crazy. We're gonna connect it in here instead, and it would be cool if we could slope it a bit. We can't, but we can always move this node a bit just to represent the slope. There you go. And then we can grab, let's just align a node here. I think that would be a good start. Wow, that is looking so weird. There you go. So we're just gonna move a node here to the center to kind of give us a good idea of how tall the bridge needs. And we got a train coming in, so that's perfect. And we can live with, you know, the clearance doesn't have to be massive because we are so environmentally friendly that we are running diesel trains. Our train network is not electrified yet. For now, that's all right. That is apparently quite challenging for me. So yeah, we're gonna stick with that for now. But I think it would be so cool to have this as a tram bridge. Oh man, yeah, we need that at some point. I don't know. I think it would be cool. Let me know in the comments. Like I said, we'd also like to just develop. I think this lot here. It's a bit of a tricky one, so it could be cool to get that done. So I'm thinking this building is a really good fit, but it also is it's maybe a little too tall. I mean, it would definitely be the biggest development in Port Douglas. So for now, I think I'm gonna PO it and just make it a little smaller and make it fit in. But it does kind of lead me to a question I'd like to ask all you guys, and that is, should we throw away this height restriction we've used in Port Douglas so that it isn't significantly taller than Pine Harbour? Should we throw that away and this whole idea of them being rival cities and just make Port Douglas a big city without any restrictions? I've been kind of thinking about that for a while. I don't know what you guys feel. Should we get some proper skyscrapers and actually really develop it into a big city? What do you feel? I'd really like to know in the comments because I'm really not sure myself. With that said, we are POing this one and we'll see if we can get, you know, a good fit here. I feel it does have a shape that lends itself really well to this awkward area. Due to the natural shape of this building, so hopefully we can figure something out. We're just gonna sink it a bit into the ground. We're gonna try and align it. It's not perfectly aligned, that's okay. And then we'll see if it's okay to just distort it, which basically just compresses the building, or if that makes it look weird, because then we're gonna need to manually try and move some floors around. Could this work? I actually feel this works sorta alright. It doesn't look unnatural that it's now a bit more chunky. So we're gonna lower it into the ground here and try to align it. Now, as some of you have commented, we've got a metro entrance here, which is a bit weird. We don't have a metro, so I'm thinking of just using this commercial building to hopefully be able to cover it up. I think that looks all right. Can we just raise it ever so slightly? Perfect, and we'll just see if we can kind of shoehorn it into this building as well. We'll just see how it looks. Looks kind of cool. So we've got a store here called $E. Very nice. And it looks all right over here as well. Cool, so we're just gonna add a bit of detailing to this. Damn, can you imagine sitting here enjoying your quiet breakfast as 400 tons of steel just comes? Hello! Wow, that's gotta be a serene experience. And here I'm just adding a super single. This park path is readily available on the market today. A super simple, not single, little park here until we decide what we're gonna do with this area. I haven't decided yet whether it should be developed or what the idea is. So for now, we're just adding a bit of park space here so it doesn't look empty, I guess. There you go. I think that's gonna do for now. Really simple little park, but we're probably gonna do something else entirely with this whole area. With that said, I think that that does wrap up the episode. I feel we've got a ton of stuff done, especially when considering the amount of detail that we did. Yeah, I think I mentioned it before in this episode, but I probably went a bit overboard with this area, and I'm not really sure I like how it turned out. I mean, it's got its own vibe, that's for sure. But yeah, it also looks a little weird, maybe. Anyways, when we work with slopes like this, and we have an interesting area here, which is compressed between a big avenue and a sunken highway, and then some really steep terrain as well, then it just lends itself well to a bit of a more detailed approach, I suppose. But it's of course important that we don't apply this level of detail throughout the region, because we're gonna run into major performance issues, and we'll maybe hit some limits as well for props and the likes. So yeah. But I kind of like how everything turned out. I think from the get-go, one of the goals was to have a really diverse, mixed area with just a bit of everything. An area which didn't always used to be desirable, but where it's clear that more recent developments are actually they're actually quite nice. Quite nice places to live. I think this complex as well, which is obviously quite modern, also really signifies the direction that Port Douglas is going in, and the size of the city as well. It takes a certain level of demand to get this level of density going, quote unquote, far away from downtown. I really like how this turned out as well. We got the metro stuff all covered up, and we've got a few, like a really small shopping strip here almost. And this building, the design of this building is just absolutely beautiful. I also think this really awkward area turned out quite well. Really hard to work with these kind of spots, but we built this architecture firm here, and I think it's pretty fitting for architects to build and work in something like this, something that will inspire them on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, like I said, one of the main questions that I'd really love some feedback on in the comments and love to hear your thoughts about is, should we restrain ourselves when developing Port Douglas? Because I feel we are already sort of setting the foundation for a city that could be much bigger than Pine Harbour. So that's kind of the question I'd love some feedback on. Should we continue to restrict ourselves, or should we already now start to do away with some of the restrictions we've set for ourselves? this idea to create a city that would rival Pine Harbour. Should we just accept that? Let's just build a big city that will likely surpass it. I'm really looking forward to guys' input on that note. Anyways, that's it for this episode. I'll try to get some really juicy cinematics going, and if you stuck with me for this long, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. The most recent episode, so many nice comments and feedback and interactions, and it was really clear you guys made an effort to like upvote it or like it or whatever you say and share it, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you guys so much. If you want to see even more stuff from Coniferia, I've got a Patreon page where I've uploaded just north of 500 pictures currently from different regions, but primarily this one. You can check that out if you want. Otherwise, other than that, feel free to, of course, subscribe and enable notifications, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a really great day. Bye.